So in terms of the three issues to consider, and again, this is post-retirement, and this is not necessarily in any order. I'll just describe it this way. The first one is actually what we've been talking about in the first part of our panel discussion today. Make sure that you have an estate plan in place. It's amazing how, I'm going to say 8 out of 10 times, and I'm not exaggerating here, when I meet with clients who are thinking about retirement, or they're already in retirement, they don't have an estate plan in place, or they updated their documents maybe 20 years ago. So make sure you have that in place. The second issue, and that's again very common when you get this referred to as generic advice, when people invest too conservatively, and there's that cliche assumption that if someone is essentially older, they just automatically have to invest more conservatively. Now, in many cases, that's true. Perhaps you should be, if you're in your 60s or 70s, perhaps you should be investing more conservatively versus when you were in your 30s or 40s. But how much more conservatively? And the issue here is your longevity risk. Again, back to stress testing our own assumptions. On average, people are expected to live to age 87. So for males, it's 84. For females, it's 89. But what happens if you live to age 95, maybe 100 even? What are the chances that you're going to outlive your own assets? That's important. And then the third issue, and this really applies, let's say, mostly to young retirees, and that's usually, from mid 60s maybe to mid 70s, this group, is when people don't have a clear distribution strategy. So they assume that, prior to their age 73, and for those of you less familiar, that's when you're required to take your required minimum distributions. They simply draw from their brokerage accounts, from their money markets, from their bank accounts. Once they turn 73, they begin to draw from their IRA, 401k, or other tax-deferred accounts. Now, in some cases, there's nothing wrong with that approach, but it's a potential missed opportunity. Why is that the case? Well, let's say you're in this, again, artificially low income years. So, you're collecting your Social Security, you're no longer working. You're in a lower tax bracket. You have options here. You can do some Roth conversions. We're not going to go in detail on what that means, but it can be very beneficial in the long run to actually reduce your required minimum distributions. Or you can simply draw from your IRA accounts or if you have a 401ks, maybe 10, maybe 20,000, so that you stay in the same tax bracket. Again, in the long run, that can save you thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands in taxes if you do it proactively, right? So you have to usually do it on an annual basis. So those are the top three things. In terms of gifting, of course, we are getting closer to the end of the year. That's when people usually start thinking about that. And I'll just give you three, ideas to consider. I'll start with the basics here. If you're thinking about doing many gifts, 5, 10, maybe 15, people or charities, and you're thinking about smaller amounts, let's say $50, up to 100, keep it simple. Gift cash. Keep, notes of your donations or gifts, and that's the end of it. You really don't need to complicate your life. If you're thinking about larger gifts, let's say to your children or maybe grandchildren, consider appreciated stock. Specifically if your children or again grandchildren are in a lower tax bracket, because you transfer it to them, they can keep it, or perhaps they can sell the stock and pay taxes at a much lower rate. And then what I've been working on, and we'll be focusing on that even more, if you're over the age of, again, 73 and you're required to take, again, your RMDs, consider donating a portion of your RMD to charity, if you have that charitable intent, because that would essentially, the portion that you give to charities would bypass your taxes. So you would reduce your income by that amount. That's one of the most powerful strategies to save on taxes for those who are, who want to support different charities.
Alex, this is such great information. I'm sitting here smiling because when you're talking about the aggressive investing and, within my own marriage, there's one of us that would be more aggressive, and there's one that's like, no, we're older. We need to be conservative in our investments. So I appreciate that. I think you're on my side here a little bit, that we need to look at the whole picture, not just, what we think we should be doing at this age.